Vielen Dank, Daniel Madlener. Und von Vorarlberg geht es jetzt weiter nach Brüssel. Dort ist Denise Auclair von Transport and Environment zugeschaltet. Hello, Denise.
Hello.
Und sie wird uns jetzt einen Einblick geben, welchen Umfang in Europa Geschäftsflüge haben, welche Menge an Treibhausgasemissionen dadurch verursacht werden und vor allem, das ist das Wesentliche, was man tun kann, um hier die Geschäftsreisen auf Klimakurs zu bringen. Denise, it's your stage, please.
Okay, thank you. So very happy to be with you today. I believe you've shared a bit about transport and environment, of which VCÖ is a member, and I'm leading our Travel Smart campaign, which is a global effort to encourage businesses to innovate their travel policies and practice post-pandemic to reduce the corporate air travel emissions and that way significantly lower the climate impacts of aviation in this decade, which is a sector where the emissions have been rising and projected to grow further post-pandemic, which is going in the wrong direction. So the goal of the campaign is to contribute to reducing corporate air travel emissions by 50% or more from 2019 levels by 2025. And one of the main tools of our campaign is our Travel Smart ranking that assesses over 300 global companies across Europe, United States, and India. So you're welcome to have a look there. While we focus on global businesses, we really consider that the approach that we've developed is relevant for all companies, as well as for other types of organizations and for governments. So should be relevant across the board. So what have we defined as key elements of a sustainable travel policy? Well, first we've looked at the necessity to set clear reduction targets. And in our campaign, we've identified 50 leading companies that have set targets to reduce their travel emissions. We believe that that also needs to consider the full climate impacts of flying. And there you can see what we call the tip of the iceberg. A lot of times we're talking about carbon decarbonization, but when it comes to flying, only 1/3 of the total climate impacts of flying come from the carbon emissions. And there are additional non-CO2, non-carbon effects, particularly identifiable in the contrails that come from the planes. So this is something that is also best practice. We have over 40 companies that are taking the full climate impacts of flying into account. Then we also believe that alongside a target, that having a climate budget for travel is an effective tool. So not only, let's say, alongside a cost budget, to have a climate budget as well, to define, to help to prioritize which travel should be undertaken. And then, of course, to choose low impact alternatives. And we have let's say, the fortune to be able to use today increasingly many different virtual collaboration tools, especially to replace long haul flying, which is the most intensive and most polluting of the corporate travel, and also shift to rail. So we're looking a lot at the different policies that businesses may implement, for example, not allowing travel by air where there's a rail alternative, whether that's under 4, 5, 6, or even 8 hours. And the last element is to report emissions, and that allows to track progress. So we've been looking not only at across the companies as a whole, but also at some individual companies. And I thought it would be interesting to share with you a couple examples coming from outside Austria. So we have the company Swiss Re in Switzerland. And what's interesting there, so they've also defined their reduction target as maintaining their business travel at below 50% of the pre-pandemic levels, basically coming out of the travel restriction period. So we find that a best practice way of defining a reduction target. And indeed, they're using then carbon budgets for individual business units They have an internal carbon price for flying. And they also have developed a travel dashboard tool that integrates different elements that allows them to manage real-time their travel practice. The second case that we have looked into is a company called Arcadis in the Netherlands, so engineering consulting company. And there they've chosen an intensity target. So that's reducing emissions per employee because they've been a fast-growing company. So they have phrased very nicely their policy to call it virtual first. So to really consider if the objectives of the meeting can be fulfilled by using virtual tools. And then train would be the default for distances up to 700 kilometers. They also have a global carbon budget, and they're really focusing in as well on looking to combine trips, objectives for different meetings, for less trips with longer stays. And both of these companies have said to us that from their perspective, it really makes good business sense. So it's not only about the environment, it's also about employee well-being. So giving more freedom, choice, and control for employees over when and how they travel. And also that it's been good for the business in terms of cost savings, and they've been able to continue to grow their business even while traveling and flying less. So the last slide then, as we're in the practical moment of our conversation, is to, and I will share the slides. Of course, you can have a look more in detail. So there are a number of tools that are available, both when it comes to calculating business travel emissions, and there I show a couple of the different main references. We also have on our website a number of travel guides that have been developed by our different coalition members that go through step by step as well the considerations to take into account. And finally, because we know that sometimes it can be more challenging to identify rail itineraries, especially for international trips, we're also bringing together a number of practical tools that can help in scheduling trips across Europe as well. So all of these you can find on our website. You're also welcome to follow our Twitter and our LinkedIn, as we're creating really a community, because we approach this as each business and each organization has a journey towards travel smart, and we're very happy to accompany and to bring people together in a community around that objective. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Denise Auclair, for your presentation. Denise, there was one question in the chat. Could you give us some examples for non-CO2 emissions? What are non-CO2 emissions?
Yes, so what I can also share with you after this event, we've just published a series of short flyers that explaining precisely more about the non-CO2 effects and how to address those. But in a nutshell, it's essentially mainly the effects from the contrails that I mentioned. So that is that the jet engines produce soot, and so this kind of ash-like material, and this crystallizes at high altitudes and cold temperatures and remains in the atmosphere and has a warming effect. So the contrails are the most visible and make the largest part of the non-CO2 effects of flying. And the other is from nitrate emissions, the so-called NOx emissions, that also participate in these warming effects. So this is important both for, let's say there are ways to avoid taking certain types of flights either at very high altitude or during cold periods, winter or evening. There are also, those are kind of practical ways to reduce in the choice of travel. And there are also a number of government measures of trying to work towards cleaner types of fuel, etc., that Transport and Environment is advocating for, and that we welcome very much also a business and other types of organization support for that.
Thanks a lot, Denise Auclair.